Nathan sat at his desk, staring at the screen in front of him. The work was piling up, and he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. As a human officer stationed in the Galactic Council's headquarters, his job wasn't exactly easy. That day, things were about to get a whole lot more complicated. A soft knock on his office door broke him from his thoughts. He looked up, expecting one of his colleagues, but instead the door slowly creaked open. Standing there, tall and elegant, was the most beautiful alien Nathan had ever seen. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, smooth and almost glowing under the artificial lighting. Her hair, long and silver, cascaded down her back, shimmering like liquid metal. But what caught Nathan's attention most were her eyes, large, dark, and filled with a mix of intelligence and something else that he couldn't quite place. Can I help you?" Nathan asked, trying to maintain his composure. He had seen many aliens before, but none quite like her. "I'm Zira," the woman said, her voice melodic and calm, yet there was a slight tremor in it. "I've been assigned as your secretary," Nathan blinked. "My... secretary." "Yes," she confirmed. Stepping fully into the room, she glanced around, clearly unfamiliar with the human-designed workspace. "I'll be handling your scheduling, correspondence, and any other administrative duties."
Daddy hate the easy.
Nathan quickly stood up, trying to look professional, but something about Zira made him feel strangely out of place. He had dealt with plenty of alien officials before, but none of them had this presence, this aura that made everything feel more important, more complicated. Okay, he said, adjusting his tie nervously. "I wasn't expecting you today, but welcome, I guess." Zira smiled, but Nathan could tell it wasn't a full smile. There was a hint of nervousness in her expression, and it made him feel oddly sympathetic. Then she moved toward his desk, and as she did, something strange happened. Nathan didn't understand it at first. The air in the room seemed to change heavy, almost charged with energy. It wasn't exactly unpleasant, but it was definitely noticeable. Zira sat down across from him, and the sensation in the air grew stronger. Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure what to make of it. He tried to ignore the odd feeling and return to his computer. But it wasn't long before he noticed something strange happening. His office door suddenly opened again, and his coworker, a young man named Alex, stepped inside. He stopped short when he saw Zira. His eyes widened, his posture straightened, almost breathless laugh. "Wow," he muttered. Under his breath, incredible. Nathan's brow furrowed. "Alex, what are you doing here?" But Alex didn't seem to hear him. His gaze was locked on Zira, and he seemed completely mesmerized. His voice, usually sharp and quick, was slow and full of awe. I've never seen anyone like you before." Zira, who had been silent this whole time, suddenly stiffened. She seemed to notice the strange behavior too. Her face flushed a little, and she quickly stood up. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Nathan was about to say something, but before he could speak, Alex stepped closer to Zira, his eyes never leaving hers. No, it's not trouble," he stammered. "I just... I've never felt this way before." "You're amazing." Zira took a small step back, clearly uncomfortable. "Please, it's fine." Alex," Nathan interrupted, standing up and moving toward the two of them. "What's going on here?" Alex blinked rapidly and shook his head as if snapping out of some trance. He looked between Nathan and Zira, his face turning red. I don't know, I just felt weird all of a sudden. Like I couldn't think straight." Nathan's eyes narrowed as he turned to Zira. "What's going on?" Zira glanced at Nathan, her expression apologetic. "I didn't mean to cause this. It's my pheromones." "Pheromones?" Nathan repeated, confused. Zira nodded, her face now a deep shade of crimson. "My species has a unique biological trait. Our pheromones can affect emotions, cause attraction, and even influence the way others feel around us. I've been trained to suppress them, but sometimes it's hard to control." Nathan stared at her, stunned. He had heard about alien species with unique biological features, but this This was something else entirely. Alex, still blushing, turned to Nathan. I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to act ... like that. Nathan raised an eyebrow. It's not your fault, Alex. Just ... Take a breath and step outside for a moment. Alex quickly nodded and almost ran out of the office, leaving Nathan and Zira alone. Nathan rubbed his temples, trying to process everything that had just happened. This is going to be interesting, he muttered to himself. Zira sat back, down, her hands folded in her lap. She looked genuinely embarrassed. I apologize again. I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Nathan took a deep breath. It's okay. I just ... didn't expect this. But we need to figure out how to handle it. I'm sure there are ways to prevent these kinds of incidents from happening in the future. Zira looked up at him, her eyes soft. I'll do my best to control it. Nathan nodded, feeling a strange sense of sympathy for her. He had always thought of aliens as distant, otherworldly beings. But Zira, with her beautiful appearance and powerful pheromones, was just as human in her struggles as anyone else. And as he sat there, trying to figure out the best way to help his new alien secretary, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of adventures and misadventures awaited them both in the days to come. The days that followed were a strange mix of awkward moments and unexpected challenges. Nathan quickly learned that having Zira as his secretary was not going to be a simple task. Every time she entered his office, the air seemed to change, as if something invisible but powerful filled the room. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was definitely noticeable. At first, Nathan thought it was all in his head. Maybe he was just too tired, or perhaps it was his imagination playing tricks on him. But then, things began to escalate. One afternoon, they were working through a pile of reports when it happened again. Zira, as usual, had her calm, collected expression, but there was a slight frown on her face as she stared at the data in front of her. She seemed deep in thought, but Nathan could sense that something was off. Zira, Nathan asked, his voice soft. Are you okay? She glanced up at him, and for a brief moment, he saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. I'm fine, she replied quickly, but Nathan wasn't convinced. He opened his mouth to say something else. But before he could speak, the door to his office burst open, and Alex, the young officer, walked in. He froze the second he saw Zira, his eyes wide in disbelief. His usual confident posture was gone, replaced by a strange, dazed look. I just came to drop off the reports, Alex stammered. But his voice lacked its usual energy. It was as if something had drained all his usual confidence. Zira blinked at him, her eyes a little wide as well. Hello, Alex? Alex didn't seem to hear her. He took a step closer to her, his movements slow, almost like he was moving in a trance. You're amazing, he muttered, his voice breathless. I've never seen anyone like you before. Nathan watched in confusion, unsure how to react. Alex wasn't acting like himself at all. His words were slow, drawn out, and his eyes never left Zira's face. Zira, on the other hand, appeared flustered. Her cheeks turned a soft shade of pink, and she quickly looked away from Alex. I don't understand, she said, her voice a little shaky. I didn't do anything. Nathan stood up, his eyes flicking between the two. He had no idea what was going on, but it was clear that Alex wasn't the only one affected. The room felt heavier, charged with a strange energy that Nathan couldn't explain. Alex, Nathan said firmly, walking toward him. What's going on with you? Alex blinked rapidly, as if waking up from a dream. His face flushed bright red, and he took a step back, looking embarrassed. I don't know, He cleared his throat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to act like that. Nathan turned to Zira, who was standing awkwardly at her desk. She had her arms crossed tightly, and she was avoiding eye contact. Nathan could tell that she was embarrassed too, but he didn't know how to fix this. Zira, Nathan said gently. What just happened? Zira took a deep breath, her eyes now meeting his. I warned you before, she said, her voice soft, but filled with regret. It's my pheromones. They can have a powerful effect on others, especially in moments of emotional stress. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Emotional stress? Zyra nodded, looking down at her hands. Yes. When I get nervous or anxious, my pheromones become stronger. I've been trained to control them, but sometimes it's hard. Nathan thought back to the last few days. Every time Zyra seemed nervous, there was always a strange reaction. From the people around her, it was like a sudden, overwhelming attraction that none of them could explain. And it wasn't just Alex. Nathan himself had felt it too, though he had tried to ignore it. But now, it seemed like the pheromones had affected Alex in a way that was much more intense. I didn't realize it was this serious, Nathan said, his voice thoughtful. But you can control it, right? Zyra looked up at him, her expression sincere. I'm trying, but I'm not perfect. I've been on planets where my pheromones don't affect anyone, and I thought Earth would be the same. But it seems like humans are more sensitive to them than I expected. Nathan let out a sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. This was going to be harder than he thought? So what do we do now? Zyra bit her lip, clearly nervous. I don't know. I've never had this much trouble with them before. I've been trying to suppress them, but I don't always succeed. Nathan thought for a moment, then glanced at Alex, who was still standing awkwardly by the door. The poor guy was still red-faced and avoiding everyone's gaze, I think. We need to figure out a way to stop this from happening again, Nathan said firmly. We can't have the entire office in chaos every time you get a little stressed. Zyra nodded, her shoulders slumping slightly. I know. I'm sorry. Nathan smiled, trying to reassure her. Hey, we'll figure it out. We always do. Right. Just as he spoke those words, there was another knock on the door. Before either of them could react, the door swung open, and another officer stepped inside. This time, it was a woman named Lara. One of the most experienced officers on the team. The moment she stepped into the room, Nathan saw the same thing happen again. Her eyes immediately locked onto Zyra, and her posture straightened. She looked completely captivated. Oh wow, Lara said, her voice breathless. You're incredible. Zyra's eyes widened and she quickly stood up. No, please. I didn't mean to. But it was too late. Lara was already walking toward Zyra, completely mesmerized. Nathan quickly stepped between them, raising a hand to stop Lara. Lara, stop, Nathan said, his voice sharp. This is not okay. Lara blinked, her expression confused. What? What's happening? Nathan glanced at Zyra, who was now looking both apologetic and embarrassed. It's her pheromones, Nathan explained quickly. They're affecting everyone. Lara looked at Zyra, and then it seemed like a light bulb went off in her head. Oh, I see. Well, that explains a lot. Nathan couldn't help but chuckle. It seemed like this problem wasn't going to be solved anytime soon, but at least they had an explanation now. He only hoped they could figure out a way to manage Zyra's pheromones before they turned every meeting into chaos. Nathan sat at his desk, tapping his fingers on the wood. The room was unusually quiet for a Monday morning. He had just received another report about the increasing number of incidents involving Zyra's pheromones. The situation was getting out of hand. At first it had been just the occasional awkward moment, but now it was becoming impossible to have a conversation without someone being affected. He glanced over at Zyra, who was sitting across from him, her eyes focused on her data pad. She had been quiet lately, and he could tell that the constant chaos was wearing on her. The fact that she had been able to maintain her professional demeanor through it all was impressive. But Nathan could sense her growing frustration. Zyra, Nathan began, his voice soft. We need to talk about this. We looked up at him, her eyes a little tired. I know, Nathan. I'm sorry. I didn't expect my pheromones to cause this much trouble. He leaned forward, his tone serious. It's not just the pheromones. It's the fact that we can't keep having these ... incidents. I'm starting to feel like I can't bring anyone into this office without them acting ... strange. Zyra bit her lip, looking down at her hands. I never meant to cause any harm, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's just a part of who I am. My species ... we're different. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Zyra took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. On my home planet, the pheromones are used to communicate emotions. It's a natural thing. But on Earth ... I didn't realize how strong they would be. It's not just attraction. It's more than that. My pheromones can make people feel things they're not ready to understand. Nathan sat back, trying to absorb what she was saying. So it's not just about attraction. It can mess with their emotions in other ways. Zyra nodded slowly. Yes, it can make people feel connected to me, even if they don't want to. It can make them feel protective or even jealous. And it can make them confused about their feelings. Nathan thought about the times he had witnessed the strange reactions in the office. It wasn't just physical attraction. People seemed to behave almost possessively around her. Alex, Lara, and even a few other officers had acted in ways that didn't make sense. They were good people, but when they were near Zyra, it was like they were under some kind of spell. Okay, Nathan said, rubbing his temples. But why can't you just control it? Zyra hesitated before answering. I can suppress it to an extent, but it's difficult. I was trained to keep my pheromones in check when interacting with other species, but I wasn't trained for Earth. I wasn't trained for this level of sensitivity. Nathan sighed, feeling a little more understanding but still frustrated. So what do we do now? How do we fix this? Zyra seemed to think for a moment. There's a method we can try. It's a kind of calming technique. I've used it on my home planet before when dealing with more aggressive species. But I'll need your help. Nathan raised an eyebrow. My help? She nodded. Yes, the technique requires a partner to act as a neutralizing force. Someone who is not affected by the pheromones. Someone like you. Nathan stared at her, unsure what she meant. Wait, you want me to? What? Help you calm your pheromones down? Zyra's cheeks turned pink, but she nodded. Yes, I'll need you to be present during the calming ritual. I'm not asking you to do anything else, just to stand by me while I focus. It will help me maintain control. Nathan opened his mouth to protest, but then he saw the look in Zyra's eyes. She wasn't asking this because it was easy for her. She was asking because she needed help, and he could see how much it was costing her to admit that. All right, Nathan said, his voice softening. If it'll help, I'll do it. Just ... Walk me through it. Don't want to make things worse. Zyra smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Nathan. You don't know how much this means to me. The two of them spent the next hour going over the steps of the calming technique. It involved a series of deep breathing exercises and a focus on creating a mental connection between them. A way for Nathan to act as a stabilizing presence for Zyra's emotions. She assured him that the process wouldn't be physically uncomfortable for him, but there would be a strange energy in the room. Just follow my lead, Zyra instructed. And whatever happens, stay calm. Don't let the pheromones affect you. Nathan nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what to expect. The thought of sitting through some kind of ritual made him nervous, but he trusted Zyra. She seemed genuine, and he knew she was doing her best to solve the situation. Zyra closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Nathan mirrored her, trying to clear his mind of any distractions. He could feel the air around them shift, and for a moment, it was as if everything in the room became still. His thoughts slowed, and he could feel the tension in Zyra's shoulders begin to ease. After a few minutes, Zyra opened her eyes and looked at him. It's working, she whispered. Thank you. Nathan felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from his own shoulders. The air didn't feel as charged anymore, and the heavy atmosphere that had been hanging around Zyra seemed to dissipate. For the first time since she had become his secretary, Nathan felt like he could finally breathe easy. This might not be the end of the pheromone problem, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough. The calming technique had worked better than Nathan had expected. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the office seemed less tense. Zyra had started to control her pheromones much better, and the office was no longer filled with awkward moments every time someone entered her presence. But Nathan knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much to learn, and the pheromone problem hadn't gone away entirely. He sat at his desk one morning, going through reports, when Zyra entered. her usual quiet presence filling the room. She had a look of determination on her face as she sat down across from him. He could see the slight tension in her posture, but she looked more in control than ever. "Good morning, Nathan." She greeted him with a soft smile. "Good morning," he replied, looking up from his work. "How's everything going?" Zyra sighed, folding her hands on the desk. "I've been practicing the technique every day, but I think I've reached a point where I need to test it more in a real situation." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean by real situation?" "I think it's time to try a full meeting," Zyra explained. "I've been doing well controlling my pheromones in small settings, but a bigger group that will really test my limits." Nathan frowned, unsure if that was a good idea. A full meeting with other people? Zyra nodded. "Yes, I think I can control it, but I need to know for sure. I trust you, Nathan. You've been helping me so far. Think you can be there to support me like before?" Nathan hesitated for a moment. A big meeting meant a room full of people who had been affected by Zyra's pheromones before. There was a chance that the calming technique would work again. There was also a chance it wouldn't. He could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air. "Well, guess we can try it," he said at last. "But we need a backup plan in case things get out of hand." Zyra smiled. "I promise, I'll do my best. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure something out." With the plan set, the day of the meeting arrived. Nathan and Zyra stood outside the conference room, ready to face the group of officers from various departments who had been invited to discuss an important project. Zyra was dressed in her usual formal attire, a flowing gown of shimmering material that gave her an otherworldly look. Nathan, on the other hand, was dressed in his standard uniform, looking slightly out of place standing next to the stunning alien diplomat. "You ready for this?" Nathan asked, looking at Zyra with a mixture of concern and determination. Zyra took a deep breath, her posture straightening. "I think so. Just remember, stay calm and I'll handle the rest." They entered the conference room, and as soon as they did, Nathan could feel it again, the subtle shift in the air. He wasn't sure if anyone else could feel it, but he knew that the pheromones had already started to take effect. It was a different kind of tension now, though. More controlled, more focused. The officers all stood when they entered, as was customary, and Zyra greeted them warmly. Nathan took his seat at the back of the room, doing his best to stay out of the way. As the meeting began, things started off relatively normal. Zyra spoke with ease, guiding the discussion with clarity and confidence. Nathan watched her closely. Observing how she handled each situation, she was doing well. No one seemed overly distracted. There weren't any strange reactions, at least not yet. But as the meeting continued, Nathan could see the change in the room. Officer Landon, a tall, muscular man with a no-nonsense attitude, kept glancing at Zyra. At first, it seemed like he was just paying attention. But then Nathan noticed his eyes lingering on her a little too long. His jaw tightened, and his posture became stiff. Nathan frowned. "No, not again," he thought. Then something even stranger happened. Officer Lara, the woman who had been affected before, began to look increasingly uncomfortable. She kept shifting in her seat, avoiding eye contact with Zyra. But there was something else, something Nathan couldn't quite place. She looked almost possessive. He glanced back at Zyra, who was speaking confidently, but her eyes were flicking nervously around the room. She had noticed it too. Nathan could see the way her fingers twitched on the table, a sure sign that she was trying to control her pheromones. But the tension was growing, and it was clear that her control was slipping. Then, just as he feared, it happened. Officer Landon stood up abruptly, his voice sharp. "Excuse me, but I think we need to take a short break." Everyone turned to look at him, confusion spreading across their faces. But Landon wasn't done. He turned to Zyra, his tone much softer now. "Would you mind stepping outside for a moment? I need to speak with you privately." Nathan stood up, his heart racing. He could feel the pheromones building up in the air, and the room was becoming more chaotic. He needed to act fast. Before anyone could react, he stepped in between Zyra and Landon, his voice firm. "Officer Landon, that's enough. We're here to work, not to make anyone uncomfortable." Landon hesitated, his expression a mix of frustration and confusion. "I wasn't no more of this," Nathan said, his voice rising slightly. "Zira is here to help, not to be ... singled out. You need to sit down and finish the meeting." Landon blinked a few times, seemingly snapping out of whatever trance he had been in. Slowly, he sat back down, muttering an apology. Zira, clearly relieved, gave Nathan a grateful smile. But the situation wasn't over. She had lost control, just for a moment, but it was enough to throw the whole meeting off track. The rest of the room was still tense, with eyes darting nervously between Zira and each other. "Maybe we should continue this later," Nathan suggested, his voice calm but firm. "Let's reconvene once we've all had time to cool down." The meeting broke up, and the officers filed out of the room. Nathan and Zira were left alone. She looked at him, her expression a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she said softly. "I tried, but it just ... didn't work." Nathan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did your best, Zira. We'll figure this out. It's just going to take time." But deep down, Nathan knew that the pheromone problem wasn't going to be solved that easily. They had learned something today, something important, but they still had a long way to go before they could control the situation completely. Nathan sat at his desk trying to finish his paperwork. It had been a long day, and the last meeting with Zira's pheromone mishap had left him exhausted. He couldn't deny that it had been a little embarrassing for everyone, especially Zira. She had been working so hard to control her pheromones, but the last incident had proved that it was harder than she thought. He looked up as the door to his office opened. Zira stepped inside, her usual calm demeanor back in place, though he could see the hint of weariness in her eyes. She'd clearly been up all night working on controlling her pheromones, and it was taking its toll on her. "Hey, Zira," Nathan said, giving her a small smile. "How's it going today?" Zira closed the door behind her and walked over to his desk, sitting down across from him. "Better," she said, but her voice had a quiet sadness to it. "I'm still trying, but I know I'm not perfect." "I don't want to keep causing problems?" Nathan frowned. "You don't have to be perfect. You're doing the best you can, and that's what matters." Zira sighed, running her fingers through her silver hair. "I feel like I'm letting everyone down. I thought this would be easier. I thought I could handle it."
What?
Nathan leaned forward, his tone serious. "You're not letting anyone down. You've been through a lot, and this isn't something that can be fixed overnight. We'll figure it out, but it's going to take time." Zira gave him a small, appreciative smile. "Thank you, Nathan. You've been so patient with me. I don't think I would have gotten this far without your help." Nathan shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed by the compliment.
It's nothing.
"You're trying to handle something pretty unusual. I'm just trying to make sure it doesn't get too out of hand." For a moment, the two of them sat in silence. The tension in the air wasn't as thick as before, but it was still there. Zira had been doing her best, but she was clearly frustrated. With how things were going, Nathan could understand that frustration. It wasn't easy to control something that was so deeply embedded in her biology. Then, Zira spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "Nathan, I've been thinking about something. Maybe it's not just about controlling my pheromones. Maybe it's about accepting them." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Zira looked down at her hands, her fingers lightly tapping on the desk. "Maybe I'm so focused on suppressing them because I'm embarrassed. But the truth is, they're a part of me. I can't pretend they don't exist. They're not a flaw, and maybe I shouldn't be ashamed of them." Nathan nodded slowly, understanding what she was saying. "I think you're right. You're not your pheromones, but they are part of who you are, and we can learn to deal with them together." Zira smiled, and Nathan could see the relief in her eyes. It was a small but significant step forward. "You're right," she said. "I've been so focused on trying to hide them that I've been making things worse. Maybe if I just let myself embrace them a little, I can learn to control them better." Nathan grinned. "We'll take it one step at a time. We'll do it together." Over the next few days, Zira started to change her approach. She no longer tried to suppress her pheromones entirely. Instead, she focused on keeping them in balance, letting them flow naturally, but without overwhelming anyone. It was a delicate, process, but Zyra was starting to feel more in control. Nathan noticed the difference too. The office seemed less tense, and the incidents were becoming fewer. People were still affected by Zyra's pheromones from time to time, but it wasn't the chaotic, uncontrollable mess it had been before. One afternoon, Zyra was busy organizing some files when Nathan walked into her office with a stack of new reports. He noticed that she wasn't her usual stiff, formal self. She was humming softly to herself, completely relaxed as she worked. He stopped for a moment, surprised by the shift in her demeanor. "You seem different today," he remarked with a smile. Zyra looked up at him, her silver hair falling loosely over her shoulders. "I feel different," she said, her smile genuine. "It's like a weight has been lifted. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm just being me." Nathan grinned. "Glad to hear that. You deserve to feel at ease." Zyra's smile widened, and for the first time, she looked like she wasn't carrying the world on her shoulders. "Thank you, Nathan. I couldn't have done it without you." Nathan was about to respond when he heard a knock on the door. Turned to see Alex standing in the doorway, his usual grin on his face. "Hey, you too," Alex said. "Just wanted to check in. How's everything going? No more pheromone-induced chaos, I hope?" Zyra chuckled softly. "I'm doing better. I think we're getting the hang of it." Alex raised an eyebrow, looking between them. "It's good to hear, because, honestly, I'm starting to think I might need a break from all this... excitement." And Zyra both laughed, the tension in the air finally broken. It wasn't perfect, but things were improving, and they were learning how to navigate this strange new dynamic together. As the days went on, Zyra and Nathan grew closer. They had found a rhythm, working together to manage the pheromone problem, while also building a genuine friendship. Zyra had stopped seeing her pheromones as a curse, and Nathan had stopped seeing them as a barrier. Instead, they both saw them as something that could be controlled, something that could be understood. And as they continued their work, Nathan couldn't help but feel proud of how far they had come. It hadn't been easy, but it was worth it. Together, they had learned that embracing their differences was the key to making things work. And that was just the beginning. The days had gone by quickly, and with each passing one, Nathan noticed a gradual shift in how things were going with Zyra. She had started to manage her pheromones with much more confidence. The strange, unpredictable reactions were becoming fewer. And the office no longer felt like a battlefield where everyone was fighting to keep their composure. There were still moments of awkwardness, of course, but they weren't as frequent, and they weren't as intense as before. Zyra had learned to control her pheromones, but more importantly, she had learned to stop being ashamed of them. Nathan admired her for that. She hadn't let herself get discouraged, even though she had faced so much trouble in the beginning. The way she had adapted, learned from her mistakes, finally begun to accept herself was inspiring. But Nathan knew there was still one more test they had to face. Big one. It was the annual meeting of all department heads, and it was one of the most important events of the year. It was where major decisions were made, and where every officer had a chance to showcase their work. Nathan had been dreading it for weeks, mainly because he knew it would be Zyra's biggest test yet. If her pheromones caused trouble during this high-pressure meeting, it could affect not only her reputation but his as well. He found himself standing outside the conference room with Zyra once again. This time she looked calmer. The usual nervousness was gone, replaced by a steady determination. She wore a formal outfit, nothing too flashy but elegant enough to make her stand out. She was ready. "You ready for this?" Nathan asked, glancing at her as she adjusted her sleeves. Zyra nodded. "I think so. I've been practicing, and I've learned how to handle these situations. I won't let my pheromones get in the way of the meeting." Nathan gave her a small smile. "You've got this. I'll be right there with you." Zyra's eyes softened. "With gratitude, thank you, Nathan. You've been more help than you realize." The door to the conference room swung open, and the two of them walked in. The room was filled with a mix of alien diplomats, human officers, and high-ranking officials. As they entered, every eye turned toward them. There was a brief moment of silence before the murmurs began. Nathan took his seat at the back of the room, where he could keep an eye on everything. Zyra stood at the front, preparing to address the group. She cleared her throat softly and began her speech, her voice smooth and confident. Nathan could tell she had worked hard on her presentation. She had all the information organized, and her words were clear and precise. It was evident that she was completely in control. But as the minutes passed, Nathan started to notice something. The atmosphere in the room had changed again. There was a slight tension in the air, almost like the kind he had felt before. He glanced around, watching the reactions of the officers. Landon, the tall officer who had been affected before, was sitting at the edge of his seat, his eyes never leaving Zyra. Lara, too, was shifting uncomfortably in her chair. She kept glancing at Zyra, her eyes narrowed slightly, as though trying to focus on something other than the pheromones in the room. Nathan could feel the temperature rising. He wasn't sure if anyone else could feel it, but he could. The pheromones were subtly taking hold again, just like they had in the earlier meetings. Zyra, however, didn't seem to notice. She kept speaking, focused on the presentation. Was impressed. She was more composed than he had ever seen her, and for a moment, he thought they might actually make it through without incident. But then, just as Nathan had feared, Officer Landon stood up abruptly. His voice, usually calm and collected, now had a hint of desperation in it. "Excuse me, Zyra, but Zyra froze mid-sentence, her eyes locking onto his. Nathan could see the shift in her expression, the sudden awareness that something was happening. Landon took a few steps toward the front, his eyes wide. I need to speak with you privately now." Zyra took a step back, her hand instinctively raising to stop him. "Landon, this isn't the time." But Landon didn't listen. He reached out, his gaze intense. Stood up, his heart racing. He could see that Zyra was starting to feel the pressure. The pheromones were slipping out of her control, and it was clear that Landon wasn't the only one being affected. "Landon, that's enough," Nathan said sharply, stepping between him and Zyra. His voice carried through the room, calm but firm. "We're here to work, not to make anyone uncomfortable." Landon stopped in his tracks, blinking as if coming out of a trance. He looked around at the others in the room, as if realizing for the first time that everyone was watching. His face turned red, and he quickly took a step back. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to know more of this," Nathan continued, his voice steady. "Sit down, and let's get back to the meeting." Landon nodded, his eyes still wide with confusion, and returned to his seat. The room, though still tense, seemed to settle again. Zyra looked at Nathan, her expression a mixture of relief and embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she whispered. Nathan gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay. You handled it." Zyra took a deep breath, focusing on regaining her composure. The rest of the meeting went by without any more incidents. Zyra finished her presentation smoothly, and the officers seemed to settle down. Nathan could tell they were all trying their best to act normal, but he knew that the pheromones still lingered in the background. As the meeting concluded, everyone stood and began to file out of the room. Zyra and Nathan remained behind, both of them silent for a moment. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air. "You did great," Nathan said, breaking the silence. Zyra smiled faintly. "Thank you, Nathan. I was afraid it was all going to fall apart." Nathan nodded. "You kept it together. That's what matters." Zyra met his eyes and, for the first time in a while, looked genuinely at ease, I think. "Starting to accept that this is just part of who I am. That's okay." Nathan smiled. "It's more than okay, Zyra." They walked out of the room together, the tension between them finally gone. They both knew they still had more work to do, but for the first time, they felt like they were moving in the right direction.